Well, it's still raining up here in North Carolina. We wonder whether we should start gathering animals two by two, but God said never again by flood, so I guess not. We looked yesterday as we went through the chronological gospels that only in John do we find a series of scriptures beginning at 5:1, which are not covered in any of the other gospels. And it starts out with the healing of the paralytic. Now, this is not the one lowered from the roof. This is the one by the pool of Bethesda. And we find him after 38 years of waiting, finding a miraculous healing of Jesus. And Jesus says, take up your pallet and walk. Well, it didn't take very long before the Jews, especially those legalistic Jews, to start questioning this man why he would work on the Sabbath. You see, God had said, keep the Sabbath holy, but he had never said exactly what you had to do as far as not working. But in rule number 39 of the embellishments of God's command, they said you couldn't move any burdens from one place to another on the Sabbath. And this man had done that, even though to leave his pallet, he would have probably had it stolen or taken away. And if he had taken it with him, he was going to be condemned. But we see his intelligence and the fact that anybody that could heal him after 38 years of being a paralytic certainly must have some power with God. And he was going to do what Jesus said to do. And so he picked up his pallet and walked with it. Well, while these Jews are watching him walk, they said, who gave you the authority then to do this? And he said, the one who said, take up your pallet and walk, the one who healed me. And they said, well, who is he? And he said, I don't know. Jesus had disappeared into the crowd because it was not yet time for him to be revealed. And the next scene that we see, we find Jesus, and it says in the text in verse 14, Jesus found him who had been healed. Now, it's interesting because he found him in the temple, which would pretty well indicate this man had gone to the temple to thank God and to be showing his gratitude for his healing. When Jesus found him, he revealed something about this paralytic that perhaps we didn't know and wouldn't have known without Jesus' words. He said, you've been healed, but see to it that you sin no more, that something worse might not befall you, find you. And so this man obviously, although not all illnesses and not all infirmities come from sin, this man's may well have. And Jesus is warning him that just because he's been healed, it's not that he doesn't have to be careful about sin, especially if sin is what caused him to be in this state to begin with. And when we find this particular word from God, it's probably a good idea for us to think about any illnesses or any infirmities that we have and ask ourselves the very question that appears that Jesus was dealing with this man, and that is, did I bring this upon myself? And if I did, I better be careful not to sin again, especially in the same way that God might allow me to suffer the consequences of my sin. A good example of that would be perhaps an alcoholic, a drug addict, someone who is addicted to sex, any area where we know where our sin is and we are healed from that particular outcome of our sin, and that we might not find a worse punishment if we continue in that sin. It's a good thought anyway. It's maybe some divine speculation there, but nevertheless, there's two very important lessons for us here. One is that the Sabbath was embellished as far as what work you could do or not do. And the second is that Jesus can heal us from whatever consequences of our sin we might have. But he does warn us not to continue in that sin. This isn't an approval of sin, but a warning to say, if sin brought about this particular infliction or problem, that we should not continue in that sin. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.